Before the wedding, before the disappointment, before the silence. Adeora and Tun's love story had a fire that burned hot, even if it started with a flicker of uncertainty. When it all began, they met through a mutual friend at a birthday party in Acadia. Tund had just returned from a work trip in Port Harcourt, tired and uninterested in mingling, but his friend practically dragged him out that night. Adeora wasn't looking for anything serious. She had just ended a casual relationship and came to the party for small chops and escape. But when their eyes met that night, something shifted. They talked for hours over suya and red wine, arguing about music and laughing about old Nollywood movies. Tund liked her immediately. Her intelligence, her dry humor, her full lips. But he told himself to take it easy. He wasn't ready for anything serious. He had plans. He was focused on work. Maybe she'd be one of those flings that last a few weeks and fade. 2 months into their not-so-serious talking stage, they had their first night together. It happened on a rainy Friday. They had gone out for dinner at a quiet spot in Victoria Island. When he dropped her off at her apartment in Surrey, she invited him in casually, almost as a joke. But once the door closed behind them, something changed in the air. He kissed her, and she didn't stop him. She led him by the hand into her room, slowly, like she had made up her mind days before. That night, Tund discovered something that shocked him. She was incredibly tight. He pulled back a little, surprised. "Are you?" Adeora smiled faintly and shook her head. "No, I'm not a virgin. I've just not had that many. I can count how many times I've actually done this on one hand." There was something shy in the way she said it. Not naive, just honest. It made Tund pause. She was different. Her body didn't just respond, it held him, welcomed him. And something about her quiet moans, her soft breathing, the way her legs trembled after. It stayed with him long after he left that night. Tund had told himself it was just going to be physical. Nothing serious. She was sweet, but he had dated beautiful girls before. He didn't plan to stay, but Adeora didn't leave his mind. He found himself replaying that night. Not just the sex, but the way she had curled up beside him afterward, tracing circles on his chest with her finger. The way she blushed when he kissed her shoulder. How she had whispered "thank you," as if he gave her more than just pleasure. He started calling her every day. He'd text her randomly. "How was your day? Did you eat? I saw a lady today that wore your perfume." It messed with my head. Adeora felt it too. She hadn't planned to catch feelings, but something about Tund's voice, the way he listened to her talk about her work drama, the way he looked at her like she was the only woman in Lagos, it disarmed her. And after that first night, she didn't want to let him go. She prayed about him. She told Rita, "This one feels different, like he might actually be the one." And all at once, 3 months later, Tund told her, "I think I'm falling in love with you." Adeora held her breath. She had felt it, but hearing him say it changed everything. From there, it moved fast. Weekend getaways, dinner with each other's families, long nights of laughter and lovemaking. The connection was real, or so she thought. During their dating phase, their sex life was intense, at least to Tund it felt that way. And Adeora, despite her limited experience, played a role that unintentionally fed into a dangerous illusion. It all started from that first night when she told him, "I haven't done this many times." That statement alone inflated Tund's ego. He felt like the chosen one, the man who unlocked something rare and delicate. And when they were in bed and she winced, gripped the sheets tightly, or whispered, "Tund, please, it's enough, let's stop, please now." He thought he was doing something right. He believed she was overwhelmed with pleasure, that she couldn't handle the intensity of his touch, his moves, his rhythm. Her breathy moans and occasional whimpers made him feel like a champion. And Adeora, in her innocence and inexperience, never corrected that impression. Not because she wanted to deceive him, but because it hurt sometimes. She wasn't that used to it. Her body would tighten reflexively, and her moans were more from pressure than pleasure. Still, she told herself, if I'm this sore, he must be really good at this. Maybe this is what it means to enjoy sex. Maybe it gets better with time. After all, She had heard her friends talk about rough passion and sweet pain as normal, so she let him think he was the man. The performance. Every time he came over and they got intimate, Tund would leave the room flexing his pride internally. He'd often say with a smile, "You see, you do beg me to stop. That shows I'm very good." And Aora would laugh lightly, even though deep down, she was still lying on her side trying to recover. Sometimes she wanted more slowness, more kissing, more connection. But he never noticed. Once he was done, he'd give her a playful kiss and crash into sleep like a man who had just conquered. And to him, that was proof of satisfaction. "My girlfriend do beg me to stop," he would tell his close friends, laughing over beers. "She can't handle me. I don't even try hard." It became his trophy. When Tund proposed, it was during their vacation to Ghana, Adora's dream trip. He had arranged everything. Dinner by the beach, a small band playing in the background, a silver ring tucked inside a slice of chocolate cake. Even though it almost went wrong when she nearly swallowed it. She screamed. She cried. She hugged him so tightly that everyone around clapped and cheered. It was magical, but beneath that magic, something inside her had already started changing. Their sex life. By this time, Adora's body had adapted to Tund's. The first few months of discomfort were long gone. She no longer felt sore afterward. No more wincing. No more awkward "please stop" whispers that used to make him grin with masculine pride. She now understood his rhythm. She knew when he was about to reach climax. She could time how long it would take. She had memorized the exact moment he'd change position, the exact sound he'd make right before collapsing beside her, satisfied. And she had learned to adjust. Now, she didn't plead for mercy anymore, not because she was deeply satisfied, but because she was used to it. Familiarity had numbed the edges of surprise. Tund didn't notice the difference. If anything, he thought she had finally matured into his style. "Ah, babe, you're now handling it now," he teased one night. "Before, you beg over any little thing." She gave him a weak smile and kissed his forehead. "I'm just used to you," she replied softly. He chuckled and pulled her close. "Exactly. That's how I suppose be." But he missed the meaning behind her words. Wedding prep and secret worries. As wedding preparations rolled in, venue hunting, cake tasting, aso-ebi designs, Adora's days were filled with activity and excitement. But her nights were quiet places where her thoughts kept spinning. She was marrying a good man. Tund was caring, supportive, attentive in every other area. But the sexual side still felt like something she endured, not something she enjoyed deeply. And yet, she told no one but Rita. "I'm scared," she confessed one afternoon while picking fabrics. "What if it never gets better?" Rita gave her a long look. "Have you ever tried telling him what you like?" Adora shook her head. "I don't even know what I like yet. I've only ever known him. He thinks I'm fine, that we're perfect. Then you better find a way to learn and let him know. Marriage doesn't magically fix bedroom issues." Oh. Adora laughed lightly, but the words stuck. She began to wonder. Had she let herself adapt too quickly to something she never truly explored? About 2 months to the wedding, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, Aora was at Rita's place helping her twist her hair while they gossiped, drank malt, and talked about random things. Mostly about the stress of wedding planning. Then, out of nowhere, Rita asked, "Girl, please, let me ask a question I forgot to ask. Do you usually come when you're with Tund?" Adora paused, confused. "Come where?" Rita turned to face her. "I mean, orgasm, do you come?" Adora blinked, unsure of how to answer. She knew sex ended when Tund was done. He would breathe hard, hold her, and ask softly, "You okay?" And she would always nod and say, "Yes, I'm fine." But now, sitting there with her friend's question hanging in the air, Aora realized something. She had never felt anything like what Rita was describing. No wave, no explosion, no uncontrollable shaking or deep release. Nothing. Rita frowned. "Wait, you mean you haven't reached orgasm before? Like, never?" Aora looked down, embarrassed. "I don't know, maybe I have? I mean, I feel okay. Sometimes tired. Sometimes I feel warm inside. But all those things you people say about screaming and your toes curling and losing control, I've never really felt that. Rita almost dropped the comb in her hand. Girl, that's not normal. You're just doing missionary duty for this guy. Look, orgasm will make your soul leave your body. Then return. That feeling would reset your mind. You would feel fulfilled. Sleep like baby afterward. Edaora laughed nervously. I sleep well after sex. Does that count? Lie. That is exhaustion, not satisfaction. Rita fired. So it's only your husband that reach orgasm all these while? And you're there acting like statue. Edaora didn't say a word. Because deep down, she knew it was true. Tund was clueless. He loved his wife-to-be. He tried to be gentle. He kissed her forehead afterward. He even asked the right question after every session. Are you okay? And Edaora always smiled, gave him a peck, and said, Yes, baby.
I'm okay.
He thought he was doing well. She wasn't complaining. She responded when he touched her. She moaned sometimes. She didn't push him away. But he never really asked the real question. Did you finish too? And Edaora didn't know how to answer it even if he had. Because she hadn't. Not once. After that talk with Rita, Edaora began noticing everything. She started paying attention to how quickly Tund was done. How he didn't touch her in certain places. How he never asked what she wanted him to do differently. How everything revolved around his satisfaction. She'd lie beside him afterward, his arm draped across her waist, while he snored softly, peaceful, relieved, fulfilled. And she'd stare at the ceiling, wondering, what does an orgasm really feel like? Will I ever have one? The more she thought about it, the more distant she became in bed. Not physically, but mentally. Her body was there, but her mind wandered. She started faking reactions to keep the illusion alive. Soft moans here, a deep sigh there. And at the end, she always said, Yes, I'm okay. Because if she told him she wasn't, she didn't know how he'd handle it. They got married a few weeks later. A beautiful ceremony in Lekki, gold and emerald themed. Everything was perfect. Their vows were heartfelt. Their smiles genuine. But when they lay together that night, in their honeymoon suite, Tund was eager and Edaora was empty. She let him take her. She held him gently. She whispered all the right things. He climaxed, collapsed beside her and pulled her close. I love you, he said breathlessly. I love you too, she replied. He asked, You okay? She nodded. Yes,
I'm okay.
but deep inside her, a silent truth echoed. I've never actually felt what it means to be fully pleased. I've never arrived at the place he reaches every time. And now they were husband and wife. 3 months into their marriage, things started changing, fast. But not in the way Edaora had hoped. Tund got promoted. It was unexpected, but well-deserved. His company had recognized his dedication, leadership skills, and consistency. He was now the senior regional project engineer, in charge of coordinating sites across Lagos, Abuja, and even as far as Port Harcourt and Uyo. It was a big deal. More money, more status, more responsibility. Edaora celebrated him wholeheartedly. She threw him a small dinner at home, even invited a few close friends. She told everyone, smiling brightly, That's my husband. Always rising. But the excitement was short-lived. With the promotion came a new rhythm. Tund began to leave the house earlier and return later. Sometimes he traveled for days, one time even a full week straight. Calls became shorter. Conversations reduced to, Have you eaten? And, I'm really tired tonight, babe. Edaora understood at first. She told herself, This is temporary. He's just settling into the new role. But weeks turned into months. And soon, she began to feel like she was married to a shadow. Dinner was eaten alone. The big bed that once held warmth began to feel colder. And the bedroom, the space they once shared, even that was changing. What hurt the most wasn't just the silence. It was the need that never got answered. Edaora began to crave more intimacy, not just for emotional closeness, but for physical satisfaction. The part of her that had been quietly starving before marriage now grew restless. Every day, her body longed to be touched, kissed, explored. She wanted to try new things. She wanted to feel things she'd only heard other women describe. But her husband, the man who used to chase her body like oxygen, was now too tired, too distracted, too unavailable. When he did return, he would sometimes kiss her lazily, whisper, "I missed you," and make love to her, quickly, habitually. And then he would sleep. She never reached climax. She never said a word. She would lie beside him, staring at the ceiling, fighting her own thoughts. She wanted to scream, "I need more than this. I need to feel something. I want to be seen, desired." But instead, she kept quiet, until one night she broke. It was a Tuesday evening. Tund had returned from Abuja. She had cooked his favorite ofada rice with ayame sauce. She even wore that silk burgundy nightwear he loved so much. He came in, kissed her forehead, thanked her for the meal, and went straight to the bed. She followed him and tried to cuddle, reaching out, pressing her body against his. But he said, half asleep,
Babe, I'm tired.
"Just give me like 10 minutes. He turned. That was it. Edaora sat up slowly. Something boiled inside her. His body was still around sometimes, but his presence, his full, intentional presence, wasn't. Edaora was tired of begging for affection, tired of waiting up, tired of pretending, and most of all, tired of feeling lonely in her own marriage. So one quiet Saturday afternoon, after scrolling through Instagram and seeing a picture of a woman walking a golden retriever by the beach, she paused. Something clicked in her. I need something to keep me sane. That week, she went to a pet shop in Lekki and fell in love with a playful, energetic, white Samoyed puppy with deep eyes and a wagging tail. The shopkeeper told her the breed was gentle, loyal, and smart. Edaora smiled. That's exactly the kind of energy I need in my life. She named her Zara. From the very first morning, Zara became her joy. Edaora woke up early, took her on walks around the estate, and met other pet owners, women, men, young professionals, retirees. For once, she had reasons to go out without makeup, without a plan. Just peace. She found herself walking longer routes, talking to Zara as they strolled. You see that house? That's the woman who always burns jollof rice. She joked. Zara, don't sniff that. Zara listened with her tongue out and tail wagging, as if she understood. It wasn't just about fitness anymore. It was healing. The long walks helped her feel lighter. She began losing the unwanted weight she'd gained from sitting indoors, emotional snacking, and overthinking. One day, after returning from a 45-minute evening walk, she caught herself laughing, like really laughing, for the first time in weeks. Zara had chased a chicken in the compound and nearly knocked over a flower pot. Edaora collapsed on the couch, giggling and breathless. You're crazy, Zara. She looked at the dog, and then at herself in the mirror across the living room. Her eyes looked brighter. Her skin was improving. Her waistline was snatching back slowly. And most importantly, her mind was clearer. She felt alive. When Tund returned that weekend from a 3-day trip to Wari, he was surprised to see the dog jumping around the house. Ah, when did we get a dog? Edaora smiled. Last week. Her name is Zara. He looked confused. You didn't tell me. You weren't around. That stung a little. Later that evening, as he watched her play on the rug with Zara, laughing and tossing a toy, he realized something. There was a version of Edaora that was beginning to exist without him. She no longer waited by the window. She no longer forced conversations. She was still beautiful, still kind. But now she was becoming whole without his help. As the weeks stretched into months, a quiet storm began to build inside Edaora, a hunger that refused to die down. She craved her husband, not just his presence, but his touch, his body, his lips, his attention, and most of all, she craved satisfying sex. But each time they finally came together, maybe after 2 or 3 weeks apart or one of his rare early nights, things played out the same way. They'd kiss. She would start to feel her body stir, heat rising, her breathing deepening. Her moans would just start slipping out, her body slowly relaxing into the rhythm. Then suddenly it would be over. Tund would grunt softly, tense up, and collapse beside her. He was done. First, Eudora thought it was just a one-off. Maybe he was excited. Maybe he was tired. But then it kept happening, again and again. Just when she was getting into it. Just when her body was warming up. Just when her own pleasure was beginning to build. He finished, and she was left hanging. Again, and again, and again. He would breathe hard, wipe his face, pull her into his arms and ask, "You okay, babe?" And she would nod, smile, and say, "Yes, I'm fine." But she wasn't. She was burning inside. She felt empty, incomplete. But she said nothing. Not because she was afraid of him. Tund wasn't a harsh man. But she didn't want to bruise his pride. She didn't want to be the woman who made her husband feel less than a man. So she bottled it every single time. While Eudora kept quiet at home, she spoke loudly to one person.
Rito.
The friend who knew everything. The one who saw through the happy wife routine. The only one who heard the real story. One afternoon, while they sat in her car after buying dog food for Zara, Eudora broke down. "Rita, I can't do this anymore. I'm always left halfway. Just when I start moaning like I'm getting into it, boom, he's done. I'm there like, is that it?" Rita stared at her, shocked. "Wait, so he comes before you get to gear 2? "Yes, and he thinks I'm fine. He always asks, 'You okay?' Like he's expecting a gold medal. And I say yes. But I'm dying, Rita. Girl, you're really suffering. You don't even get to enjoy your own body." Eudora looked out the window. Her voice softened. "I've never told him. I just pretend, smile, fake a small moan to protect his ego." "Protect his ego?" Rita snapped. "And who's protecting you? So you're bringing all your frustrations to me? Am I your husband?" They both laughed. But it wasn't funny. Eudora's marriage had turned into a performance. And she was the lead actress in a drama of unfulfilled pleasure and unspoken needs. Made it harder was this. Eudora wanted sex more than her husband. Tund never noticed it, but her desire was real. She found herself thinking about it during the day, imagining what it could feel like to be touched right, to be kissed slowly, to be taken to the edge and brought back again. But instead, she was left midair. Again and again. And worse, she couldn't stop thinking about what she was missing. Not because she wanted another man, but because she was becoming frustrated and resentful. Rita saw the signs. "Ada, this will lead you to trouble. One day you would explode or fall into temptation." But Eudora didn't want anyone else. She just wanted her husband to try, to notice, to ask, to care enough to finish what he started. It was a Thursday. Tund had been gone for 4 days, this time in Enugu for a site inspection. Eudora missed him deeply, but more than anything, her body ached for him. She had spent the entire day fantasizing about what it would feel like to finally connect with him again. She shaved, took a long, hot bath, wore her softest silk robe, black, sheer, barely covering anything. She even lit candles in the bedroom and sprayed the bedsheets with his favorite cologne. Zara was already in her little corner. Eudora waited. The clock ticked past 9 p.m. Then, finally, the sound of his car horn. Her heart leapt. Tund walked in, dropped his travel bag, hugged her loosely, and gave her a soft kiss on the cheek. "Babe, I'm so tired. That trip drained me." He slumped into the couch. Eudora smiled gently. "I made you pepper soup. I missed you." He nodded. "I'll eat later. I just need to lie down small." Minutes later, he went to the bedroom, changed into his boxers, lay on the bed, and within 10 minutes he was snoring. He didn't touch her, not even a glance. Eudora sat on the edge of the bed, still in her robe, staring at the candles now burning for no reason. She felt like a fool. Her body was buzzing, burning. Her thighs ached. Her chest was tight. She had waited for this, hoped for this, needed this, but again, nothing. And by Sunday morning, he had packed his bag again. "Another short trip," he said, kissing her forehead. I'll be back before Wednesday. Just like that, he left again, without ever touching her. She sat on the edge of the bed, eyes filling with tears, jaw clenched. She had never felt so unwanted, so forgotten. It wasn't just about the sex anymore. It was about being seen. The next day, she called Rita, voice low, frustrated, dry.
Rito.
I think I'm going mad. I needed him so badly that night. I set the mood, prepared everything. He didn't even look at me.
Rito hissed.
This man, are you a piece of furniture? So he didn't touch you at all. Not even a kiss. He said he was tired. Then he left again this morning. There was silence on the line. Then Rita said bluntly, so, do you want me to link you up with one of my male friends? Someone clean, confidential. He'll take care of you, body and mind. Adeora's heart skipped.
Rito.
I'm not saying you should do it. I'm asking, do you want to? Because all this you're bottling will turn to poison one day. Adeora shook her head.
No.
I don't want to cheat. I still love my husband. Then you need to do something, Ada. Either you speak, or you explode. Because no woman can function when she's burning 24/7. There was a pause. Then Rita asked a question that caught her completely off guard. Wait, does he suck you? Adeora blinked. Huh? Suck me? Yes. Does your husband use his mouth to please you, down there? Adeora's voice dropped. God forbid. Why will he do that? Rita laughed so loud, Adeora nearly hung up the phone. My dear, you haven't enjoyed life, maybe that's why you haven't reached orgasm till now. You think it's only penetration that takes a woman to heaven? A lot of roads lead to pleasure, not just one. Sometimes it's tongue. Sometimes with fingers. It's the full experience that matters. Adeora went quiet. You mean, that alone can make someone, just that? Just that? Girl, some ladies reach climax just from head alone. You're missing a lot, I must say. A seed planted. That night, Adeora lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Rita's words echoing in her head. Maybe that's why you've never reached orgasm. And he had only ever known one way to do it. Quick, straight penetration, no curiosity, no exploration, no time. And she had accepted it as her reality. But now her eyes were opening. So you mean all this while, I've been starving. And I didn't even know what I was missing. That thought stuck with her. And for the first time, Adeora began to wonder if maybe the problem wasn't just Tun being busy or tired. Maybe the real issue was that she never let herself be known. Not by him, not even by herself. That night, after Rita's blunt question and teasing laughter still echoed in her ears, Adeora couldn't sleep. Tund was away again, some late-night emergency at the Port Harcourt site, and the house felt like a silent museum. Even Zara, her furry companion, was fast asleep in her corner. Adeora lay on the bed, scrolling through her phone. The conversation with Rita kept replaying. Does he suck you? No, why would he do that? Babe, maybe that's why you've never reached orgasm. Her curiosity, mixed with silent frustration, finally pushed her to Google. How does a man pleasure a woman with his mouth? She hesitated before hitting search, feeling nervous, even shy, but she tapped it anyway. Shock and discovery. Immediately, dozens of articles, blog posts, educational videos, and diagrams popped up. Headlines like, 10 ways to drive her wild with oral, how to please a woman beyond just penetration, clitoral stimulation, what most men don't know. Adeora's eyes widened. She clicked on one article written by a female sex therapist. It talked about how many women never reach orgasm through penetration alone, and how oral sex was one of the most direct, powerful ways to help women truly experience pleasure. Deep, soul-shaking pleasure. The article was respectful, educational, and filled with real advice. Take your time. Focus on the clitoris. Use your hands. Watch her reactions. Go slow. Don't rush. Pleasure is in the details. Adeora sat up slowly in bed, still reading. So this was normal? So this wasn't dirty or degrading? So this was something other couples, married couples, were doing to deepen intimacy? She scrolled further and saw testimonials from women. I cried the first time my husband did it. Not because it was dirty, but because I finally felt cherished. It changed our sex life. I felt understood. Eudora blinked. A lump rose in her throat. So this is the thing I've never known I needed? Then she started watching videos of it, seeing how men do it with their tongue. She got more wet watching it. It felt like they were doing it to her. Then watching more sex videos and how it's done. She wanted something like that. After scrolling further, she found a video of a dog sucking her bored owner vaginal. She would just open her legs in front of the dog, and it would start sucking it, making the lady moan, then the lady would squirt. She wanted that kind of feeling. Immediately, something came to her mind. I have a dog. Why don't her teach her how to suck me and make me feel the same way? A new kind of want. That night, something shifted in her. It wasn't just desire. It was a deep longing to be explored, to be touched with care, to be made to feel like she wasn't just a vessel for someone else's release, but a woman with her own map of pleasure, waiting to be discovered. She dropped her phone, heart pounding. For the first time in her life, she wanted more, intentionally. Not just sex, not just quick touches, but intimacy, attention, focus. The following day, after she was done giving the dog breakfast, she was dead wet, always getting wet for no good reason. She brought Zara close, get a brush and paste, brushed and cleaned her tongue and mouth as good as she can, to make sure she's some bacteria-free. Afterwards, she took off her clothes, sat on the floor, brought the head of her dog close to her vaginal. She poured honey between her thighs, and gently pushed Zara's head towards it. She licked a little. It was sweet. There was licking more. As she was doing that, she pulled her head closer to her private part, and Zara started licking her private part. That turned her more on. She froze. She's never gotten such feelings before. Her mouth was wide open because of the pleasure. She wasn't herself. In less than 3 minutes of Zara sucking her vaginal, her legs were shaking. She burst into waters. She squirted on Zara's face. Innocent Zara didn't know what it was. As she continued sucking, she discovered it started shocking her. It became so sensitive. Then she pushed Zara's head away. She was so relieved. She felt so light. It was like heavy weight just left her stomach. She said to herself, this must be what Rita is talking about. Now I see what I've been missing. From that day onwards, Zara never rests. She used her whenever she is honey. She don't even need any penetration. All she needed was a tongue playing with her clit. And that continued. The silence in the house no longer felt like punishment. Over time, it started to feel peaceful. Not because things had improved between Eudora and Tund. They hadn't. If anything, they had grown more distant. He still traveled often, still came home exhausted, and still didn't notice when her touches became routine rather than affectionate. But Eudora had quietly adapted. And a big part of that change had a name, Zara. What began as a desperate decision to avoid loneliness turned into a true bond. Zara wasn't just a pet anymore. She was a companion, a source of affection, comfort, and structure in Eudora's life. She would wake up early just to take her for a morning walk, talk to her while cooking, lie beside her on the couch while watching TV. When Tund was away, Zara was there. When he was home but distant, Zara still filled the gap. She greeted Eudora with excitement, sat at her feet while she worked, rested her head on Eudora's lap during quiet nights. You understand me more than he does sometimes, Eudora whispered to Zara once, brushing her fur while tears rested silently in her eyes. One Saturday evening, Tund was home. He sat in the living room, laptop open, typing furiously, barely speaking. Eudora had cooked, set the table, and tried to initiate conversation. But the most she got was a grunt and an occasional nod. Instead of begging for attention or trying to lure him to bed like before, she simply rose and called softly, Zara, let's go. The dog wagged her tail and trotted after her, tail swinging like she understood the mood. They took a walk under the estate lights. The air was cool. Eudora's mind was clear. She smiled at passers-by. She paused to breathe in the air. When they returned, she went into the room with Zara, shut the door behind. After 24 minutes. She came out smiling and feeling free. She didn't feel desperate anymore. Tund was at home, but he didn't feel like home. Zara somehow did. Comfort in routine. Zara reminded Aora of how affection should feel. Warm, consistent, unquestioning. She didn't need explanations or apologies, just presence. It was ironic. She never thought she'd feel more emotionally satisfied around a dog than a husband. But Zara listened. Zara waited. Zara responded. Tund didn't. And now Zara has replaced the physical or romantic intimacy Aora longed for, and she gave her peace. And in a season of emotional drought, peace was more than enough. Tund had finally done it. He applied for a 1-month leave from work. After months of endless travel, sleepless nights in hotel rooms, and a growing emotional gap between him and his wife, he decided it was time to be home. Time to reconnect. Time to revive what had started fading. He didn't tell Aora his exact plan. He wanted it to be a surprise. So when he walked through the door with a small suitcase and a bright smile, she was genuinely shocked. "I'm home," he said, hugging her tightly. "For the next 1 month. Just us." Aora blinked, unsure how to respond. Part of her was relieved. The other part was unsure. Surface intimacy. Tund was a man of intention. That first week, he was attentive. They cooked together, watched movies, even took Zara for walks as a family. He began trying to initiate intimacy again. Soft kisses on her neck, whispered compliments, late-night cuddles. And for a while, Aora responded. She had missed his presence, missed being touched, missed the closeness. But when they finally went to bed and things became heated, the same old pattern reappeared like a bad song on repeat. Just as her body started to respond, just as she began to feel pleasure build, he climaxed. Fast. Too fast. And rolled away, content, breathing heavy. Ah, bib. That was something else. He would then kiss her cheek, get up, and head to the bathroom for a quick shower. But Aora never stayed in bed afterward. She would lie there for maybe a minute or two, eyes open, chest rising and falling in frustration. Then get up quietly, wrap herself in a robe and leave the room. At first, Tund didn't think much of it. He assumed she was going to get water or use the restroom. But after the 3rd time, he noticed something odd. She always returned about 10 minutes later, calm, quiet, and sometimes glowing. Once or twice, he even noticed her biting her lip lightly as she entered. And once, she hummed softly to herself. "Everything okay?" he asked one night. "Yes," she said with a small smile, climbing into bed beside him. But there was a kind of peace in her eyes that didn't come from what he had done. And that began to bother him. Tund became restless. He started watching her more closely. After every time they had sex, he would pretend to sleep, listening carefully as she slipped out of bed, gently closing the door behind her. Each time, she returned more composed, sometimes refreshed. Once, she even returned with slightly wet hair, as though she had washed her face or done something in the other bathroom. "Where exactly does she go?" he wondered. "What is she doing that I'm not part of?" His mind, once full of pride, began to fill with doubt. Was she calling someone? Was she touching herself? Or worse, was there someone else? Tund didn't confront her immediately. He watched. He observed her silence after intimacy, her calm departure, her even calmer return. He noticed how she smiled more after her short disappearances. Not during their moments, but after them. She no longer looked frustrated after sex. She no longer sighed in bed. In fact, she looked satisfied. But not because of him. And that tore at his chest. He began to feel what Aora had felt for months. Neglected, confused, uncertain. Tund had been pretending to sleep again. Their sex had ended the same way it always did, quickly. He had finished. She hadn't. As usual, Aora lay still beside him, her breath calm, her eyes wide open. And after a few minutes, just like before, she rose from the bed, quietly slid into her robe, and padded softly out of the room. But this time Tund followed. Barefoot and careful, he moved a few steps behind, making sure the hallway creaked as little as possible. His heart pounded in his chest, not just with curiosity, but with fear. Fear of what he might find. She walked past the kitchen, past the dining area, And then, gently, she turned the knob of the guest room. Tund moved closer, his body pressed to the wall beside the door. It wasn't fully shut, just enough to hide her. But through the small crack, he saw the faint glow of the bedside lamp. He could hear movement. He leaned slightly closer, holding his breath. Then he saw her, sitting on the edge of the bed, robe loosened, head bowed. Then he saw Zara beside her. She brought her up, placed her in between her legs, then applying honey around her thighs, and how she pulled Zara closer to lick her vaginal while resting on the walls of the bed. With the it wasn't their first or second time. Looks like it has been going on for a long time. She noticed the way she was moaning louder and differently. He had never made her moan that loud. He was shocked and the same time felt less of a man. She never spoke anything about their sex life. She was always okay when he asked afterwards. Tund couldn't take it anymore. He had seen enough, not in disgust but in pain, in the aching realization that this woman he once shared everything with was now handling her deepest needs alone. He pushed the door open gently but firmly. Aora heard the sound of the door, but she wasn't moved. Why? Because she was close to orgasm and couldn't stop. Then it came. A lot of water gushed out from her private part. On the face of the dog, Tund saw everything. He has never made her squirt in their years of having sex. He never even knew she could do that. Aora. She froze. Her face flushed. Her hands trembled. You followed me? She whispered. Yes, he replied. His voice wasn't loud, but it was tight with emotion. I had to. Because every night, after we're done, you disappear. 10, 15 minutes later, you come back looking different. She said nothing, just stared at him, wide-eyed, caught. The outburst. Why, Aora? Tund snapped, stepping closer. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say you were suffering? Dying in silence. Why pretend all this time? And why choosing to do it with a dog? An animal. Her eyes filled with tears. Because I didn't know how to say it. You could have said something. You just kept bottling it up and smiling. What am I supposed to think? She choked back a sob, finally breaking. I tried. I tried so many times. Tund. But every time I wanted to talk, you were tired or gone or brushing it off, so I stopped trying. Her hands trembled as she stood up, robe wrapped tightly around her. Do you know how it feels to crave your own husband and feel invisible? To be touched but not fulfilled? To feel like a tool, not a woman? He didn't respond. Not immediately. She continued, voice cracking. This wasn't about cheating. This wasn't about being disrespectful. I just wanted relief. I wanted peace. Something to help me stop feeling like I was going mad. And that was the only way I knew how to let go. With a dog? Why a dog? I never wanted to cheat on you, Tund. I made a vow to stand by you, not going to another mad in hard times. The crack in his armor. Tund looked at her, really looked. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't see the cheerful, composed wife who smiled for guests or took Zara on her long walks. He saw a woman who had been holding herself together with threads and silence. A woman who had lost her sense of being desired. And part of him broke. I didn't know, he said quietly, sitting on the edge of the guest bed. I swear, Aora, I didn't know it was this deep. She nodded, wiping her face with her sleeve. Because you never asked, you never noticed, you were too busy. And I got tired of asking for crumbs of attention. Two people, finally talking. They sat in that room for over an hour. Talking, really talking, about how their sex life should be. How Tund's quick climaxes left her feeling empty. How she had faked satisfaction to protect his pride. How silence turned into bitterness. It was ugly, it was raw, but it was honest. And for the first time, the mask dropped. Tund didn't promise to fix everything that night. Aora didn't pretend she was okay. But they both sat with the truth. And sometimes that's where healing starts. They stayed up till dawn. Tund and Aora sat side by side on the guest bed, feet barely touching the floor, stripped of pretense and ego. There were no raised voices anymore. Just hushed tones, deep sighs, watery eyes, and long silences between raw confessions. Aora told him everything. How lonely she felt, how undesired she had become, how unfulfilled she was in their bed and their home. And Tund, though hurt by some of her words, listened. He admitted it, he had stopped paying attention, stopped being curious, stopped growing with her. I was doing my duty, he said, but I wasn't loving you like a woman who needed more than just a man beside her. She nodded. They both cried quietly, not out of pain but from the relief of finally being honest. The sun rose gently over their home. No shouting, no bitterness, just a new sense of clarity. In the kitchen, over warm cups of tea, Tund took Adora's hand. Let's start over, he said. Let's build something new, one where we're not afraid to say what we feel, what we want. She smiled weakly. Are you sure? I'm sure. Then he looked into her eyes seriously. And I want it to be just us. If we're rebuilding this thing, let's remove anything that came in between. No more secrets, no more substitutes. He hesitated before saying it. Even Zara. Zara had been her emotional companion during her darkest nights. But a deeper part of her knew he was right. We can't rebuild intimacy while holding on to replacements, he said softly. We share everything again. No middle ground. No walls. The next morning, Adora arranged with a responsible family in the estate who had kids and a love for pets. The handover was quiet. She hugged Zara one last time, whispering, "Thank you for being there when no one else was." She didn't cry, but her heart ached. A quiet, necessary goodbye. That evening, the house felt strangely empty, but not cold. Tund stayed close to her, helped clean up, sat beside her during dinner, held her hand longer than he had in months. 2 days later, Tund stepped out and drove across town to meet Chuka, his close friend from secondary school, who now ran a wellness and supplement store. They met at a small buka and caught up on old times, laughs, childhood mischief, old crushes. Then Tund leaned forward and lowered his voice. Guy, I need to talk to you about something serious. Chuka raised an eyebrow. Talk to me. Tund swallowed his pride. I don't last long in bed. Chuka paused, then chuckled. That's what's keeping you quiet since? Tund looked embarrassed. It's affecting my marriage. My wife. She never says it, but I know she's been suffering. Chuka smiled knowingly. You're not the first man to say that. There are ways to fix it. But first, you need to be relaxed. You're probably in your head too much. Then he opened his car and handed Tund a small brown bag. This is all natural, herbs. Works for stamina, control, and mental focus. But don't overuse it. Use it when you're mentally ready. Tund looked at the label, curious. You've used it. Bro, I'm married too. Chuka laughed. Try it. And give me feedback in 2 days. They laughed again. But this time, Tund laughed with a sense of hope. Tund returned home that afternoon looking more focused than usual. His steps were sure, his voice steady. Adora, he said, gently taking her hand. Before we go any further, I want us to do this properly. Let's get tested. Blood work. Infections. Full panel. Adora blinked. She understood why he said it. She was ashamed and scared. I just want peace of mind. For both of us. I want to make sure you're clean from what happened, he said. If we're starting fresh, let's do it clean with nothing hidden. She stared at him for a moment, then nodded. Okay, let's do it. They visited a reputable diagnostic lab that same day. It was awkward at first, sitting beside each other in the waiting area, filling forms and answering questions neither of them had thought about in years. By the next evening, the results were out. Clean.
No infections.
No underlying issues.
No hidden worries.
You're both good, the doctor said, smiling as he handed them the reports. Now go and enjoy each other. In peace. Tund and Adora exchanged glances. A new kind of silence followed. One filled not with tension, but with anticipation. Back home, Tund excused himself and went to the bathroom. From his drawer, he quietly pulled out the small brown sachet Chuka had given him. It wasn't just about the herbs, it was about intention. For once, he wanted to show Adora that he had heard her cries, even the ones she never voiced loud. He took the capsule, drank a full glass of water, and stared at himself in the mirror. Tonight, I show her she matters. When he came out, he found her already in bed. The room was dimly lit. No music, no candles. Just a calm energy that felt different from the forced efforts of before. He slid under the covers beside her and wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her gently close. She looked at him, slightly surprised at the softness in his eyes. "Are you okay?" she asked. "More than okay," he said. "And I want you to be too." That night, Tund was hopeful but still nervous. They started slow.
Familiar touches. Soft kisses.
Edaora responded gently, not rushing him. There was progress, but as soon as the tension began to rise between them, it happened again. Too quick. He finished. She hadn't. Tund, panting slightly, rested his forehead on her shoulder, disappointed. Edaora stayed still. Then he turned to her, held her face with both hands, and whispered,
"I'm sorry, babe.
"Just give me one more chance. Please. I'm fixing this, I promise." She nodded. "I know. I'm not upset. I trust you." And with that he held her tight, no shame. Just hope. Round 2. He didn't rush this time. After resting for a few minutes, Tund felt his body stirring again. Stronger, firmer than before. The herbs were slowly settling in, and with them came a sense of calm confidence. This time he listened to her. They began with soft romance. Kisses on her neck, hands caressing the small of her back, his lips trailing down her chest and stomach. Then she whispered something for the very first time. "Tund, please, suck me." He froze for a moment, then nodded. He moved lower, slowly, carefully, and did it, not just out of obligation, but out of attention, learning her rhythm, her breath, her moans. She gasped, twisted the sheets, her legs trembled. "Yes, yes, just like that," she whispered, breathless. For once, it wasn't just sex. It was discovery, the shift in him. By the time she reached for him, her eyes half closed with satisfaction. She felt it. "You're hard," she whispered in awe, as she gently stroked him. "Very," he replied with a confident smirk. He lay back as she returned the favor for the first time in a long time, curious, playful, and surprised at how hard and responsive he was. "It's working," she whispered, eyes locked with his. Then, slowly, he climbed over her, and this time when he entered her she gasped, not because of pain, but because of how deeply she felt him. How full, how powerful, and unlike the first round, he didn't rush. He moved with control, confidence, rhythm. She moaned louder, her hands clutching his back. Her breath shortened. "Tund, I'm close," she gasped. "Don't hold it back," he said, kissing her neck. "Let go." And she did. For the first time, her body trembled as she reached her climax. A wave of emotion and release that left her limp beneath him, smiling through tears. But he wasn't done. Tund kept going. His strength didn't waver. His pace deepened. His breath stayed steady. Edaora blinked in disbelief, laughing softly between moans. "You're still going?" she whispered, stunned. "Oh, I'm just getting started." She gripped the bedsheet, her body overwhelmed by the second wave building inside her. "Ah, Tund, wait. Take it easy." He smiled but didn't slow down. His hands held her hips, his body guiding hers, both of them drenched in sweat and emotion. Her pleas turned to gasps, her gasps to cries of pleasure.
"I'm tired."
"I can't again," she begged, her voice trembling. "You're not done. Not tonight," he whispered. And for the first time, Tund was in control, not of just his body, but of their moment. Focused, present, deeply connected. The aftermath, when they finally stopped, both breathless, drenched, and trembling. It wasn't just exhaustion. It was healing. Edaora lay on her back, smiling at the ceiling like someone who had found something she thought she'd never feel again. "You really came back to me," she whispered. Tund kissed her shoulder. "I never left. I just forgot how to show it." They lay in silence, fingers intertwined. And in that moment, it wasn't just about sex. It was about rediscovering love. Together. The room was dark and quiet. After the second round, Edaora lay still, her body completely worn out, legs slightly numb, her mind somewhere between exhaustion and euphoria. Her eyes were closed, lips parted, heart still fluttering from the wave that had just passed through her. But Tund? He wasn't done. About 30 minutes later, his hands found her again, gently stroking her thighs, trailing across her belly. Adeora opened her eyes slowly, her voice raspy and surprised. "Again?" she asked, half laughing, half stunned. "Yes," Tund replied softly, his voice deep. "I want more." She blinked, smiled weakly. "I thought you'd be tired." He shook his head with a small grin. "Not tonight. I've missed you too much. I'm not letting this moment pass." She chuckled, dragging a pillow under her back. "You're the kind of husband I prayed for. Now I have to build strength to keep up with you." The third time was slower, even more intentional. He kissed her deeply, whispered her name, held her like he was still in awe of her. And when he finally entered her again, she gasped. Still sensitive, but surprisingly ready. She responded like someone falling in love all over again, not just with his body, but with his effort, with his patience, with his presence. And though she was already exhausted, she couldn't stop smiling. "God, I didn't know it could be like this," she whispered against his neck. "It should have always been like this," he replied. When they finally finished, both breathless and drenched in each other's warmth, sleep took over naturally. Tund wrapped his arms around her as she curled into his chest, their hearts finally beating in rhythm again. The sun filtered through the curtains gently. Adeora stirred first, her body aching in the best way possible. She stretched slowly, letting the memory of the night wash over her again. She smiled. It wasn't just good sex. It was healing. She looked at Tund, still sleeping soundly, one arm stretched over her pillow like he didn't want her to go anywhere. She leaned in, kissed his cheek softly, and slipped out of bed. In the kitchen, she took her time. Light yam porridge with vegetables, fried plantains on the side, and freshly squeezed orange juice. She arranged everything neatly on a wooden tray, adding a little note that simply read, "Thank you for last night. I feel seen. I feel wanted. I feel loved. Ada." She walked back upstairs and gently nudged him awake. "Tund." He stirred, eyes half open. Then he saw the tray. His lips curled into a sleepy smile. "What's this?" "Breakfast in bed," she said softly. "My own way of saying, thank you." He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. "I should be the one thanking you." They both laughed quietly. She sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder as he took his first bite. There was no awkwardness, no weight in the air, just warmth, peace, and a shared understanding that something real had been restored. From that night onward, everything changed. There was a new light in Adeora's eyes, a calm confidence in her smile, a soft rhythm in her steps that hadn't been there in months. She was fulfilled body and soul. Tund, on his part, was no longer just a husband trying to meet expectations. He had become a man deeply in tune with his wife's heart and body. He was present, attentive, and intentional. The very man she once dreamed of when she prayed for love, companionship, and passion. Their bedroom no longer felt like a battlefield of disappointment. It was now a sanctuary of joy, laughter, and long, fulfilling nights. A man in love again. When Tund's 1-month leave finally came to an end, he returned to work with a different mindset. Colleagues noticed it, his glow, his energy, the spring in his step. "Tund, you're shining lately," one of them joked. "Is it Ada that is giving you peace like this?" Another laughed. He only smiled, but deep inside he knew it was true. There was something about Adeora now that pulled him home. Her scent, her laughter, the way she welcomed him at the door like they were still newlyweds. Before, work had been his escape. He stayed late, traveled often, and barely looked forward to returning home. But now, he counted the hours. He wanted to go home, to her voice, to her softness, to her presence, the peace of a woman. One evening after work, Tund returned home earlier than usual. Adeora was in the kitchen, barefoot in one of his oversized t-shirts, humming to herself while preparing dinner. He stood by the door for a while, watching her quietly. No words, just gratitude. She turned, surprised to see him so early. "You're back already?" He walked up to her and hugged her from behind. "I couldn't wait. I just wanted to be with you." She smiled and leaned into him, her hands still busy with the cooking. "You didn't even ask what I cooked," she teased. "It doesn't matter," he whispered. "Even if it's just Gary and groundnut. As long as it's with you, I'm full." She laughed softly, resting her head on his chest. Tund wasn't just back in the house, he was back in the marriage, completely. For Adeora, something magical had happened. She never lacked sex again. Not just the physical act, but the kind that left her soul humming, her body resting easy, and her mind at peace. Tund was consistent, he wasn't rushing anymore. He learned her cues, read her silence, asked questions. He made her feel desired daily. Not just in words, but in every touch, every gaze, every effort. Some nights were playful, some were slow and intentional. Other nights, they held each other without a word, connected even in stillness. The woman he came home to, every day after work, Tund drove home with one thing in mind, her. She wasn't perfect, but she was his, and the peace he found in her arms now meant more than any deal closed at the office. And Adeora? She no longer cried into her pillow. She no longer wondered if she was enough. Now, when she lay in bed at night and felt his arm pull her close, she smiled. Content, secure, and deeply satisfied, her husband was no longer a stranger in the same house. He had become her man again, and she, his answered prayer. It had now been 2 years since their wedding. 2 beautiful, restored years, full of passion, laughter, and growth. Tund and Adeora had rekindled everything they thought they lost. Their home was peaceful, their love was steady, and their intimacy was now stronger than ever. But one thing remained missing: a baby. Every month they hoped. Every month, she waited to feel something different. And every month, nothing. The silent wish. At first, Adeora didn't say much. She told herself not to panic. After all, she was still in her early 30s, and Tund had always said, "Let's enjoy ourselves first." But with each passing cycle, a quiet pressure began to build. She noticed the way people looked at her at family events. The way her mother-in-law smiled politely but said things like, "We're praying for good news soon, oh." And even though Tund never pressured her, she felt it too, in her own heart. She wanted to be a mother. She wanted to carry his child. She wanted to hear little feet running through the hallway of their home. When desire meets frustration, Tund too began to notice. They were making love frequently, almost every other day. Their bond had never been better. Yet, after 2 years, nothing had happened. One night, after another negative pregnancy test, Adeora sat on the edge of the bathtub, silent. Tund found her there, staring into space. He knelt in front of her, took her hands. "We'll figure this out," he said. What if something's wrong?" she whispered, barely audible. He squeezed her hand gently. "Then we face it together, like everything else." Taking action. That week, they went for their first fertility consultation. Both of them got tested: hormone levels, sperm count, ovulation tracking. It was awkward, vulnerable, but they were determined to do it together. The doctor was kind and thorough. "There's no sign of any major problem," he said. "But sometimes even healthy couples can take longer to conceive. If nothing happens in a few more months, we'll explore other options, IVF, IUI. But for now, keep trying naturally and we'll monitor." It wasn't the miracle news they hoped for, but it wasn't hopeless either. It was a beginning, growing through it. In the months that followed, Tund became even more supportive. He started joining Adeora in lifestyle changes: less stress, better diet, daily walks, supplements. They prayed together at night, cried quietly sometimes, too, but they always ended the night holding each other. Sex wasn't just about pleasure anymore, it became a prayer, a longing, a sacred attempt at creating life together. Sometimes it hurt to hope so hard, but they never stopped trying. It was on a calm Saturday evening. Tund had stepped out to pick a few groceries, and Adeora, left alone in the living room, found her thoughts spiraling again. Another month had come and gone, and her period had arrived 2 days ago. Another negative test. Another silent heartbreak. She picked up her phone and dialed the one person she always ran to when she needed to speak freely.
Rito.
"Babe, you sound heavy," Rita said, picking up almost immediately. Edaora sighed deeply.
I'm tired, Rita.
"It's been 2 years now. Nothing. I don't even know if I'm doing something wrong." There was a long pause on the other end. Then Rita responded softly. "Ada, do you remember I once told you about the fertility clinic that helped me when I was also struggling to conceive?" "Yes," Edaora replied, suddenly more alert. "It's called the People's Doctor Medical Center. They're in Benin City. Very good and reputable. I've referred 2 people already, and both have babies now." Edaora sat up straighter. "Really?" "Yes, and there's one amazing doctor there. You can actually message him directly on Instagram. He responds fast and will tell you how to go about it. That's how I started too." "Send me the page," Edaora said without hesitation. The first step. That night, Edaora scrolled through the Instagram page Rita had sent her, the handle at MD People's Doctor. She was surprised at how detailed and professional the posts were. Testimonies, educational tips, real client reviews, and even gentle encouragements for couples like her. Tund returned home to find her deep in thought, staring at her phone. "Who's that?" he asked. "It's a fertility doctor Rita recommended. She said they helped her conceive." He sat beside her as she showed him the page. Tund nodded, supportive as ever. "Let's try," he said simply. "We've come this far together. What's one more step?" Edaora smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude, consultation, and hope. She messaged the clinic's page that evening. Within hours, she got a response, warm, professional, and clear. They asked a few background questions, explained the steps, and gave her a link to pay for her initial online consultation. Edaora transferred the consultation fee immediately. After paying the consultation fee, Edaora received a message from the clinic's Instagram handle, at MD People's Doctor, with the next steps. "Thank you for trusting us, Ma. Kindly run the following fertility tests for you and your husband and send in the results for proper analysis. We need both sides to rule out the exact challenge and recommend the best treatment." The message was followed by a detailed list of tests. For Tund, semen analysis, hormonal profile, FSH, LH, testosterone, scrotal scan. For Edaora, hormonal profile, FSH, LH, prolactin, estrogen, TSH, transvaginal pelvic scan, ovulation tracking. Tund and Edaora looked at each other, serious, but hopeful. "Let's just do it. We said we would face this together no matter what," Tund said. "Together," Edaora echoed. The unexpected results. They got some of the tests done immediately from a reputable lab in Abuja. Within a few days, the results started coming in, and Edaora scanned and sent them to the fertility clinic via WhatsApp. Later that evening, they received a voice note from the doctor. "Thank you for sending in your results. After reviewing both of your tests, we've spotted 2 things that may be affecting conception." They both leaned in, their hearts racing. "Mr. Tund's sperm count is quite low, marked as oligospermia. It means there are fewer sperm cells in the semen than required for optimal fertilization. However, this is something we can work on with the right supplements, timing, and adjustments." Tund swallowed hard, shoulders sinking a little. But the voice note continued. "For Mrs. Edaora, your prolactin level is elevated. Prolactin is the hormone responsible for milk production after childbirth, but if it is high when you're not breastfeeding, it can interfere with ovulation and cause delays in conception." Edaora stared at the phone in silence, completely stunned. They had both done regular tests before, but these issues had never been flagged clearly. We didn't expect this," she whispered, processing the news. Tund paced the living room later that night. His ego had taken a hit, but he looked over at Edaora, who sat on the couch, fingers intertwined tightly. "I thought it was you all along," she said softly. "I thought it was you too," he admitted. They both laughed bitterly, not at each other, but at the assumptions they had silently lived with. Tund finally sat beside her and took her hand. So, we both have our parts to fix. No blame, no shame. We fix it together. Adeora looked at him, her eyes moist. Together, moving forward. The next day, they received a full treatment plan from the clinic. Tund was prescribed a natural sperm-boosting supplement plan, dietary recommendations, and was advised to reduce alcohol and avoid heat exposure near the groin. Adeora was placed on prolactin-lowering medication and encouraged to monitor her cycle closely. The doctor reassured her that once her levels came down, her body would begin to ovulate normally again. Every 2 weeks, the clinic checked in. The doctor monitored their progress. Adeora joined a private fertility support group via the clinic, where other women shared hopeful stories. "We're not alone in this," she told Tund one night. He nodded. "And we're going to beat it." One quiet Tuesday morning, Adeora stood in the bathroom, staring at her calendar. Something wasn't right. Her period was due 5 days ago, and while she had learned not to raise her hopes too quickly, she couldn't ignore how her body felt different. Mild nausea, tenderness, and a strange kind of calm. "Maybe it's just stress," she whispered to herself. Still, her heart was beating faster than usual as she opened the drawer, pulled out one of the home pregnancy test kits bought weeks ago, and made her way to the bathroom. She waited, and then, there it was, 2 pink lines, clear, bold, positive. Adeora's legs went weak. She covered her mouth and gasped.
Jesus, I'm pregnant.
Shared joy. Tund returned from a short morning errand to find the house strangely quiet. Then he heard her call softly from the bedroom. He rushed in, thinking something was wrong. But what he saw melted him to his core. Adeora was sitting on the bed, eyes full of tears, holding the positive test strip in one hand and covering her mouth with the other. "Baby!"
I'm pregnant.
For a few seconds, Tund froze, processing what she said. Then he dropped his keys, dropped to his knees, and hugged her tightly. "Are you serious? Are you sure?" She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I've done it twice. Same result." He held her face, kissed her forehead over and over again. "Thank you, God. Thank you. Thank you." It wasn't just the joy of a child coming. It was the journey they had endured, the tears, the tests, the prayers, the faith. Now it had all led to this moment. A date to celebrate. That evening, Tund told her to dress up. "No questions," he smiled. "Just wear something nice." He took her to the same restaurant they had gone to on their first anniversary. The cozy place tucked in a quiet corner of Abuja with soft jazz music and dim lighting. This time, everything felt brand new. They held hands across the table, whispering, smiling, their hearts full. "You've always been enough," he said, raising a glass of fruit juice for her. "And you've been everything I prayed for," she replied, eyes shining. They laughed like lovers, stared at each other like it was their first date. And for that night, the world outside didn't matter. Their love had survived storms. Now it was basking in sunlight, grateful beginnings. Back home that night, Adeora curled up beside Tund on the couch. "Do you know what I'm most grateful for?" she asked softly. "What?" he replied, stroking her hair. "That you never gave up on me. That even when we didn't know what was wrong, you stayed. And when we found out, you didn't point fingers, you held my hand." He smiled. "It was never your battle alone. It was ours." She rested her hand on her belly. "Now, we have a miracle growing inside me." They sat in silence, overwhelmed by peace. Their story wasn't perfect, but now it was complete. Adeora's first trimester came with the usual tiredness, breast tenderness, and a bit of morning nausea. But by the time she entered her second trimester, everything changed. Instead of pulling away from Tund physically like most women do, Adeora felt the complete opposite. She was hungry for food, yes, but more than that, sex. Her hormones were in full swing, and her desire for Tund became almost unexplainable. "Morning and night, please." One morning, Adeora rolled over in bed, her hands sliding over Tund's chest before he could even open his eyes. "Baby," she whispered, her voice low and playful. "Mm," he responded, half asleep. "Let's do it. Now." Tund chuckled, still groggy. Ah, again? Yes, again. I didn't get enough last night. He sat up, blinking in disbelief. Ada, this pregnancy is turning you to another person. Oh, she laughed. I just want you. Morning, night, anytime. First, Tund enjoyed it. He loved the attention, the closeness, the way she looked at him like he was the most irresistible man alive. But as her belly started growing, his confidence wavered. The belly fear. By the start of her 6th month, Adeora's round bump was prominent, beautiful, and very much in the way during intimacy. One night, she reached for Tund again. He paused. Ada, wait, are you sure it's okay? I don't want to hurt the baby. She raised her brow and sat up slightly. Tund, how many times will I tell you? The doctor said it's perfectly safe. The baby is protected inside. It's not like you'll touch the baby. I know, he said sheepishly. But sometimes I feel like I'm fighting for space with another human inside you. Adeora laughed so hard. She nearly cried. Just focus on me. The baby is chilling. Understanding her needs. Tund finally relaxed again after she had him sit through a quick virtual session with their doctor, who reassured him gently. As long as there are no complications or bleeding, sex is not only safe, it can be healthy during pregnancy. It reduces stress for the mother and strengthens emotional bonding. That night, Tund took extra care. Slow, gentle, supportive, and Adeora? She felt alive, even with her swollen belly, stretch marks beginning to form, and backaches creeping in. She never felt more desired. And Tund began to realize, pregnancy didn't take her away. It brought her even closer. In the heart of love, every kiss, every touch, every time they lay together. It wasn't just about pleasure. It was a celebration of what they were building. Family. Some nights, she'd cry softly after, placing his hand on her belly. Can you believe there's life inside me? She whispered. It still feels like a dream, he'd say, rubbing her bump. And when the kicks began, tiny nudges that interrupted their bedtime routine, they both laughed and adapted. They were growing in every way, physically, emotionally, spiritually. It was a warm Saturday evening, with the skies calm and the air soft with breeze. Adeora had just stepped out of the bathroom when she felt it. A sharp tug in her lower belly. Not the usual cramp. This one stopped her in her tracks. Tund, she called, gripping the bedpost. He rushed in immediately, dropping his phone on the floor. What? Is it time? She nodded, breathing through it. I think it's happening. Within minutes, the hospital bag was in the car, and they were on their way to the maternity ward. Adeora squeezed his hand so tightly as the contractions came in waves. But through the pain, she smiled. We're finally here, she whispered. Welcome, baby. Hours later, at 3:42 a.m., through sweat, tears, and joy, Adeora gave birth to a healthy baby girl. The moment the doctor laid the baby on her chest, Adeora broke into soft sobs. Tund stood beside her, wiping tears of his own, completely overwhelmed. She looks like you, he whispered. No, Adeora said with a tired smile. She looks like us. Tund kissed her forehead and then the baby's tiny hand. Their lives had changed forever. Life after birth. New rhythm, new fire. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of midnight cries, diaper changes, breastfeeding, and learning to function with barely any sleep. But even in the chaos, Tund and Adeora found joy in little things, like watching their daughter yawn, or the way she curled her fingers around theirs. One night, after Adeora finished feeding the baby and put her to sleep, she walked into their room and found Tund waiting, looking at her with that same old glint in his eyes. You look beautiful, he said, reaching for her waist gently. After all the milk and sweat? She teased. Even more beautiful, stronger than ever. Tund no longer needed the capsules his friend gave him. Months of taking them, combined with a healthier lifestyle, rest, and confidence restored through Adeora's constant affection, had done something powerful to his system. His body had adjusted, recovered, stabilized. Now, his performance was no longer a worry. His confidence wasn't tied to pills. He was fully present, fully energized, and, more importantly, fully connected to his wife. Do you know the most beautiful thing? Aora whispered one evening after they made love, their baby already asleep in her cot. What? He asked, stroking her hair. You don't even realize you've become the man I used to only dream about. Tun smiled, pulling her closer. Because I already had the woman I prayed for. I just had to grow into the man you deserved. Chapter 104. Happiness, finally. Their home was now filled with laughter, baby giggles, music in the mornings, and warm cuddles at night. The journey had been long. There were delays, misunderstandings, quiet frustrations and fears. But now, they had peace, love, intimacy, a child, and each other. Tund and Aora no longer felt like two people trying to make a marriage work. They were one team, thriving in love and purpose. And every time Tund looked at his daughter or held his wife close at night, he whispered a simple prayer. God, thank you. You gave me everything, and more. Kindly like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories.